Barcelona sick of Messi nostalgia, but forced to stare at elephant in the room. Take a cursory glance at social media these days and you would be forgiven for wondering why Barcelona don't just call it a day. Dusted Club read one comment on Twitter after their official account had the temerity to thank the fans for their support following the El Clasico defeat on Sunday. Biggest banter club around was another typically mature and well-thought-out post to join the cesspit of other swipes and insults leveled at one of the world's biggest sporting institutions. And, finally, there, predictably, it was, the dig that is supposed to hit hardest and cause most damage to the Blaugrana faithful. You're nothing without Lionel Messi. This may be the view of the average armchair fan, but as Mirror Football found out this weekend, for the people of Barcelona, that opinion could not be further from the truth. The real issue, however, is over who they turn to now for adoration as they desperately seek to move on quickly from their traumatic breakup. When a long-term relationship collapses, most people go through a similar process to the 7 stages of grief. The initial shock is followed by an inability to accept the truth before anger and sadness eventually make way for acceptance. Upon arrival in Barcelona ahead of the match against Real Madrid, this publication expected to find a city still mourning the loss of its favorite adopted son. But instead, the cloud already appears to have passed, and most locals appear optimistic about the future. Jose, 25, grew up just a stone's throw away from the new camp and was nonplussed when asked about the impact of Messi's farewell. Of course it was tough at the time, but now people are ready for the next generation, he said. We have a young squad, full of talent, and in a few years I think we will be a really good team. We will never forget what Messi contributed and what he gave to the club, but this is football. Am I supposed to cry forever? Wandering around the imposing old ground ahead of kickoff you notice there are strikingly few references to Messi, and the only nod towards him in the club shop is the sight of the Argentine grinning happily in a giant team picture following the successful 2010-11 Champions League campaign. Have your say. Who will Barcelona's next big star be? Let us know in the comments section below. An employee at the megastore told us, within 15 days of him leaving we were told to remove everything bearing his name, shirts, posters, mugs, everything. There was certainly a desire to immediately move forward and give the limelight to other players in his absence. We still get occasional tourists who ask about buying a Messi shirt, but most people are only interested in the current squad. Around the local bars and restaurants in the Les Courts neighborhood there is still the occasional sighting of an old Messi 10 jersey. But there is also a huge variety of other names around, De Jong 21, Memphis 9 and Pedri 16 to name a few. In an exclusive interview with Mirror Football, former Barca defender Albert Ferrer explained that the club have had plenty of practice when it comes to saying goodbye to its heroes and are used to simply getting on with it. Barcelona is so big that they can move on even from a player with such an impact as Messi, he said. Maybe in the first couple of months the supporters may have been thinking I'm missing Messi, but they're very objective and practical. We won't forget what he did, but we need to focus on what we have. A lot of big players, Xavi, Andres Iniesta, Carles Puyol, left and there was a big impact, and Barcelona always recovered. It is a club that knows that even in the bad moments they will get through it. We have full confidence they will recover, and sooner rather than later will be a big team again competing for major honors and one of the favorites in European competition. In a real-life separation, after a period of moping and drunk 3 a.m. texts to an ex, the time finally comes to get back on the horse and re-enter the intimidating world of dating. The problem for Barcelona is how they find a new idol after enjoying a 17-year love affair with arguably the greatest player of all time. There is one man in particular who seems to be giving their fans hope and appears to be their brightest prospect. That man's name is Ansu Fati. In truth, the word man is used loosely here because the precocious forward will only turn 19 on Sunday. Yet even at such a tender young age, Fati's diminutive style of play and exciting dribbling ability is already seeing him being compared to a certain someone. And when asked, 5 merchandise sellers were unanimous in agreement that Fati's shirt is the one that is doing the most trade, perhaps helped by the fact the Spanish international inherited the famous no.10 from his predecessor. At least 3 supporters described Fati as a crack, a Spanish slang word which effectively translates as someone who is brilliant at what they do. Fati's name received a particularly loud roar when the starting lineups were read out ahead of kickoff against Madrid at a pulsating new camp. But he struggled to make much of an impression on the game, often taking up good positions, but finding himself unable to provide that killer final pass or shot before being substituted on 74 minutes. All of which goes to emphasize, as if it wasn't already known, Fati is not Messi. Not yet, at least. Realistically, Barca's fall from grace and money woes mean that they are unable to go out and splash the cash on an established superstar. And their most promising route back into the big time looks to be through their academy-nurtured youngsters such as Gavi, Pedri, and Fati. Yet it is likely that all three of them will need at least another year or two to develop and realize their true potential. It is for this reason that fans are now left in something of a state of limbo. There has seemingly always been a star man for them to fawn over, going back to the days of Johan Cruyff and through to the likes of Rivaldo, Ronaldinho, and, of course, Messi. Now, they are waiting for the next one. It may well end up being a deeper issue for the club and, indeed, the city of Barcelona too. For years tourists have arrived in their millions, drawn by the prospect of seeing some of the most famous and elegant players around strutting their stuff. Without that promise, attendances have dramatically fallen, as the pitiful 47,317 versus Valencia, and even worse 45,968 versus Dynamo Kiev last week goes to show. Of course, the pandemic is a big factor here, but regardless of that, until Barca are able to showcase a new protagonist, casual fans will be more inclined to stay away. Whether or not that Fati can change that remains to be seen. A few hours after the referee had called time on the disappointing defeat to Madrid, the new camp lay quiet in that eerie way football stadiums do after a big game. A weary-looking pensioner, who has no doubt seen it all when it comes to his beloved club, hobbled down the Travesera de les Courts but had enough energy for one final passionate outburst before making his way home. "Look, Barcelona will always be bigger than anything or anyone," he croaked. "Our motto is Messi un club, and that is the way it will always be. Frankly, I'm tired of the Messi talk. Messi this, Messi that. I only want to speak about Barcelona now." His words seem to neatly sum up the attitude of an entire city. But until they find a suitable new partner, Barca will likely continue to be haunted by their ex.